Moonboard launched Artemis I coverage to new heights. Last month, NASA debuted the agency's most advanced launch vehicle since the Space Shuttle. The Artemis I Space Launch System rocket lifted off from Launch Complex-39B at Kennedy Space Center in Florida on November 16, sending an uncrewed Orion spacecraft on a 25-and-a-half-day trip around the moon and back. Welcome back to the Space Gaze. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to stay updated when we release new videos. Without further delay, let's dive in. In addition to the thousands lucky enough to see SLS launch in person, a magnitude higher watch from afar through broadcast and internet live streams, which have now been viewed over 10 million times, according to data provided by space agency officials. In fact, Artemis I broadcast included live feeds from multiple KSC locations, with cameras at the launch pad, anchored coverage with Meagan Cruz at the KSC media site overlooking SLS, input from broadcast and launch commentator Derrol Nail, and a live presentation at the Saturn V Center with Dan Huot. Tucked underneath the 5 huge rocket engines affixed to the business end of America's first moon rocket on display inside the Saturn V Center, Huot controlled a not-so-meager 100-inch high-definition, interactive touchscreen monitor to help viewers visualize every step of the Artemis I mission. The 42-day Artemis I mission will test the Orion spacecraft, a capsule that will orbit the moon and one day carry human crew members there. Once in the atmosphere, Orion will begin in Earth's orbit, then soar through space, powered by the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, a 45-foot-long cylindrical system with one engine. As Orion flies toward the moon, a service module provided by the European Space Agency will course-correct as needed. The spacecraft will complete up to 1.5 revolutions in lunar orbit, where it will set a record for the farthest any spacecraft that can carry a crew has traveled. Then it'll fire its engines at just the right time to be propelled back toward Earth, with the aid of the moon's gravity. On October 10, the Orion spacecraft will make a roaring return to our atmosphere. It will be moving at 6.8 miles per second, the fastest re-entry of any capsule built for humans. The craft and its heat shield will have to endure temperatures of 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, a crucial part of this test mission, since can't artificially create these conditions on the ground, reports Gizmodo's George Dvorsky. If it survives, Orion will splash down in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of San Diego, within view of a U.S. Navy ship that will recover the spacecraft. What's special about the mission's rocket, called the Space Launch System? The SLS is the most powerful rocket ever built, period. It stands at 32 stories tall and weighs nearly 6 million pounds. To build it, NASA contracted several companies. Northrop Grumman worked on the boosters, Aerojet Rocketdyne built the engines, and Boeing built the rocket's orange core stage. The project cost some $23.8 billion, a total that drew some criticism for being over budget. When the SLS launches, it will be propelled by about 8.8 million pounds of thrust, a figure that dwarfs the Saturn V rocket that launched the Apollo missions, which had 7.5 million pounds of thrust, Gizmodo reports. But when SpaceX's Starship, which is currently in development, takes off, it will earn the title of the most powerful rocket for its hopping 17 million pounds of thrust, meant to carry people to deep space destinations. Still, SLS is the only rocket that can send Orion, astronauts, and cargo directly to the moon on a single mission, per NASA. The launch of Artemis I was nearly a dozen years in the making and represents the efforts of countless engineers, contractors, and mission specialists from across the United States, many of whom flocked to Florida's Space Coast to witness the launch. And while some employees were able to sit back, perhaps nervously, to finally watch the fruits of their labor leave planet Earth, others at the space agency marched into launch day mission-ready and laser-focused on getting Artemis I off the pad. And for a few personnel who showed up on launch day, the goal was to share the experience with the world. To help viewers across the globe witness the Artemis I launch, Media Team premiered some dynamic, high-tech advancements in their ability to present the historical event in all its glory. Other centers, like GSC and executive producer Sami Aziz, told Space.com, referring to the broadcast quality capabilities of major facilities across the United States. However, that's no longer the case at KSC. According to ASIS, teams at the Space Center have spent the past 5 years upgrading infrastructure to support 4K broadcasting and streaming capabilities in anticipation of their extensive Artemis coverage. For ASIS and the media team, broadcasting the launch of SLS was about shining a light on Artemis in a way accessible to everyone. How do we tell this story? How do we make sure that everybody digests this, follows this, and understands the complexity? ASIS said he asked himself and his team. Once you're in or with the media, you understand some of these terms and acronyms. Even SLS, for somebody who's just tuning in, they have no idea what that is. So how do we make sure that they're digesting this content? That was the goal from the beginning. The Moonboard was the brainchild of Derrol Nail. Nail is a former journalist and says he was inspired by election coverage from major news networks. I really liked how they used large interactive touchscreens to bring the numbers to life. In the same way, I wanted to bring the details of the Artemis I mission to life for the public. How do we amplify commentary was basically the goal here, ASIS said. Derrol had the idea, and then it was discussed internally. And obviously everything is done by big committees here at, so people have to buy into the idea and understand what it is. It's a lot harder when it's just an idea being pitched on paper, and then actually seeing it. We got a great response to it. Huot stood with a massive presentation piece beneath the end of the Saturn V rocket, near the entrance to the Saturn V Center, where ASIS says a notable crowd gathered during the broadcast, which is exactly what he hoped would happen. Let's get a crowd going, ASIS said of his approach to the Moonboard setup. Let's get people surrounding Dan, asking questions. So for each Moonboard hit there was a little crowd there watching as well, which was kind of exciting. To juxtapose it with the Saturn V hanging above his head and show the brand new rocket I think was really great, and the space lends itself beautifully for the Moonboard, he said. As for its functionality, NASA media team worked with contractor Media Fusion to develop the interactive software and animation to demonstrate various stages of the Artemis I mission from pre-launch through splashdown of the Orion capsule in the Pacific Ocean. We went through several rounds of finding glitches, fixes, and consistency errors, ASIS said. That was probably 4 to 5 months or prep, he added, noting his team's attention to detail. We wanted to make sure it looked perfect and really conveyed the agency's messaging. It's not exactly like your phone, ASIS explained. You have to get used to that friction on the screen. You can adjust the sensitivity levels on it. Like at some point we would touch it and it would just be very jerky and fast, but then we learned how to kind of manipulate it and work with that. That's all I have for you guys for today. If you liked watching this video, please make sure to click the like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the bell icon so that you may be notified when we upload a new video. Thanks for watching.